Cypher, I've finished unpacking the last of my equipment. Between your ship's onboard systems and my custom apparatus, you'll soon have the finest in-flight laboratory in the sector.
You'll make us the envy of the fleet.
Then I'll refrain from publicizing it. Officially, of course, I'm in semi-retirement, monitoring background radiation somewhere in the Zetan wastes. Unofficially, I'm very much looking forward to traveling with you.
Understood, Doctor. I've never been to the Zetan wastes, and we have never met.
An excellent start. I expect this should prove very interesting. Should you need anything from me, you only have to ask. Although if you want my genetic code rewritten, let me know before we leave the ship.
I thought you could become a Rakghoul whenever you wanted.
It's somewhat more complicated and time-consuming. Well, nothing to be concerned with, but rarely an option in the field. Good day. Cypher, join us. Vector and I were just discussing Moff Letshara.
We never met her, of course.
Quite fortunate, that. But Vector did know her husband, a fine Dejaric player and a scribe of the Ilfmar Gambit.
We apparently share the Doctor's taste in theatre.
I didn't know you're interested in theatre.
Think of it as a testing ground for human nature, much like the game of Dejaric.
We can finish this later, Doctor.
Your crew members are delightful people. For instance, did you know Mistress Kaleo is fluent in Kalish profanities? A rare and admirable skill. I wonder how you manage them. Leadership is such a delicate thing.
You sound like you've thought about this.
I confess it had crossed my mind. A dead or alienated colleague is a resource lost, and in our business, it's a small step from being disliked to being blacklisted.
Alienate enough people and you find yourself running unauthorized missions on a dead planet.
Quite. I could tell you stories. But I'm afraid I have to attend to my data analysis program. Another time, Cypher. My good friend, allow an old man some sentiment and join me for a reminiscence. Today is the 13th anniversary of the death of Cypher 12, one of the finest agents I've ever worked with.
I've never heard of a Cypher 12. They don't mention our predecessors much.
Our history is fleeting, to say the least. Cypher 12 was one of the old guard from before the war. He cultivated allies on the fringes. By the time he received his Mandalorian brands, he'd also become verbally abusive in private, but he never cracked on the job. Always had a smile.
Were you partners?
I was technical advisor on several of his assignments, and we shared a taste in Mirialan cuisine. Eventually the odds caught up with him, and a Hapani royal assassin punctured his lungs. Inevitable, really. Are you aware how few ciphers survive past year 5?
The odds aren't good for any of us.
Quite so. I admire the line you walk between obedience and ingenuity. Unfortunately, your methods breed enemies. Be careful not to end up without recourse.
You chose to join my crew. If you didn't like my methods, you could have found a way out by now. What are you after?
I've made it through a very long career by choosing my partners wisely. I've outlasted them all, and I intend to keep doing so. Cypher, I had the most delightful conversation with Master Vector. Did you... I'm getting a feed on my earpiece. One moment. I apologize. That's the 3rd time this week one of my security alarms has gone off.
Where did you set up an alarm system?
I monitor all my safe houses as a matter of course. I have a few dozen around the galaxy. A precaution, really. I haven't needed them in years. Usually when an alarm goes off, it means a child has come exploring, or a rat has slipped through the ventilation shafts.
You've got havens set up. What's in them?
You know the sort. An abandoned building here, a fortified wine cellar there, stocked with necessities of the trade. Most of them aren't on the official books, but I assure you, they're hardly incriminating.
Remind me not to underestimate you, Doctor. If we ever need a sanctuary...
You'll have whatever humble aid I can provide.
Doctor, you wanted to talk.
Yes, and I'm terribly sorry to take your time, but I have a small request. To be frank, it's a bit of an embarrassment.
You have my undivided attention.
I told you before about my safe houses, how my intruder alarms have been going off. Well, I attributed it to local happenstance. I may have been mistaken. My safe house on Balmora exploded.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Very much, but my scanners melted 0.7 milliseconds after activation. I could theorize regarding who did this and why, but truthfully, all I know is someone bypassed Imperial security to get inside. I'll need to see the safe house in person. I'll return as soon as I can.
You could be walking into a trap. Stay alert, Doctor.
And you. Well, I'm afraid the news is mixed. My safe house did indeed burn to the ground, along with 3 would-be assassins who were attempting to wire it with explosives. Apparently, my security triggered their bombs prematurely.
Do you booby-trap all your safe houses? Or just the ones your enemies know about?
You make it sound like I used safe houses as bait. I did acquire genetic samples of the intruders. I'll be running traces shortly. One was a human male. The others, uncertain. Regardless, they used Imperial equipment and codes to get inside. Someone in the Empire wants me dead.
Supposing you're right, what do you intend to do about it?
The list of people with grudges against me is a long and varied one. It will be some time before I narrow it down. But I take comfort in the fact that I'm once again viewed as a threat. My days in retirement are over.
What can I do for you, Doctor?
Forgive me, but as your sole medical officer, I have to point out that your eating habits have been less than satisfactory lately. Now, I'll take my share of the blame. I've been preoccupied making calls, catching up on what I've missed in the intelligence community. Still, the fact that people are trying to kill me does not excuse my neglect of your health.
Any leads on the people who came after you on Balmora?
I've identified one of the assassins as an operative for Colonel Langor, a man with ties to the Imperial Science Bureau. The Bureau is also the likely origin of the other dead men whose genetic structure had been mutated. Weaponized humans.
I've heard of the Bureau, but I don't know much about it.
Military research, organized like an insect's hive of divisions and subdivisions with their own would-be queens. Which reminds me, I'd like your permission to run some tests on Master Vector. I'm rather curious about a joiner's physiology, and Vector is keen to learn more about himself.
If it won't cause harm, I don't have any objections.
Wonderful. I'll let him know the good news. And of course, I'll keep you apprised. My good friend, have you noticed that the price of Dianogan tea has risen considerably since we broke the Treaty of Coruscant? One of the costs of war you never anticipate. And now my jamming device is working, so we can dispense with the inanities.
You're not usually this cautious. What's going on?
Thanks to a now wealthy Kubaz information broker, I've identified the people who want me dead. They represent an organization called Project Protean, a secret research and development group inside the Imperial Science Bureau.
You are good at this game. Give me the details.
Protean researches practical applications of alien biology. You recall the genetically modified assassins who came after me? They're only the beginning. Imagine troops spliced with Abyssin genes to enhance healing, or adrenals derived from Gamorrean hormones. Most test subjects don't fare well, but you can see the potential.
That sounds awfully like what you were doing on Taris.
There's a great deal of interdepartmental rivalry in our work, and my research does overlap with theirs. They may have targeted me in order to ensure that they have no competition, inside or outside the Empire.
This is your operation. What's our next step?
Further study, I'm afraid. Right now, I'm unsure where the project is based or how to contact its members, but I wanted to keep you apprised. Now, about that Dianogan tea. A moment. Hour 36. Subject exhibiting a low-grade fever and elevated N-cell counts. I will proceed to the second formula. Apologies for that, Agent. Bioexperiment logs wait for no man.
Going to say what your experiment is about?
Well, I told you about Project Protean and their research into alien genetics. I managed to gain access to one of their databanks.
Nothing incriminating there, but I was impressed by their scientific data. I've been adapting it for my own studies into the Rakghoul virus.
Do I want to know how you acquired Protean files?
They make the mistake of sharing supercomputing resources with other Science Bureau divisions. From there, it gets technical. In any case, I'm undergoing my second day incubating the newly modified virus. If it doesn't break down my cell structure entirely, I should emerge revivified.
You become a stronger, faster man-eater?
More important, the change itself will be less taxing. It's not unpleasant as is, but it leaves me with a tremendous headache. Now, if you'll excuse me, this fever is becoming distressing.
Agent, you can bear witness. Dr. Lokin has agreed to hike Cars Falls with us if we visit the Cars City Opera.
Vector's musical tastes are, frankly, unsophisticated. I'm only trying to help.
Then we have a deal.
Well, that can wait. Right now, there's something the three of us must discuss.
I think you've got our attention.
As you are both aware, I've been investigating Project Protean, an off-the-books division of the Imperial Science Bureau.
The people who want you dead.
Precisely. Their research is focused on human-alien genetic splicing. I've studied their files, along with your own physiology, Master Vector, and I've come to a conclusion.
Project Protean arranged your meeting with the Killiks so they could study the joining.
Vector was working for the diplomatic service, not the Science Bureau.
Protean is well-funded, perfectly able to trade favors with Vector's old superiors.
That part doesn't surprise us.
For what it's worth, I don't believe it was personal. They wanted a test subject, and you were on Alderaan already.
If this is real, what does it mean for Vector and the rest of us?
They have files on the Killiks, ways to hurt joiners or to heal them. They may have altered Vector, or simply observed him.
I consider it our obligation to find Project Protean and end them, for Vector's sake as well as mine.
You've pulled a lot of data on these people. Finish the job.
It will be my pleasure.
If you'll excuse us, we'd like to commune with the Hive.
You don't want my advice, but I'll give it anyway. Vector knows who he is. Give him time to be sure of it.
Agent, I've been continuing my research into Project Protean, the fine people who want me dead, and who are responsible for Vector's condition.
I have the location of their headquarters.
No inquiries into my health? No playful anecdotes as we circle around the topic?
Not today, I'm afraid.
Protean's main laboratory is on a planetoid in the subterral sector. Security is tight, but not impervious. I've arranged transportation for Vector and myself. He deserves to know the truth about his victimizers.
If you're moving against Protean, I ought to be there. Besides, you'll need assistance.
I'm afraid this is a personal matter, and I am capable of operating on my own. I plan to learn exactly why Protean tried to kill me and recover their data on Master Vector. The rest we can play by ear.
Take whatever equipment you need and call me if you run into trouble.
Of course. We'll see you again when this is over.
We have returned from Project Protean. The task is done.
And I have promises to keep. It seems Protean was based on prior experiments in alien biology. My prior experiments. I had no proof until I discovered certain former associates in the Protean lab. But I've ensured that they will not misuse my research again.
How exactly were you involved in Project Protean's origins?
Some years ago, I worked on Project Harvest. I had an attack of conscience, resigned, and took my research with me. Or so I thought.
Your associates said you left because you wanted more control.
They would, wouldn't they? Now they've been dealt with. In return for my generosity sparing the laboratory, I've been appointed unofficial Protean director. From now on, every experiment, every assay goes through me.
That's quite a victory. What do you plan to do with that authority?
Protean serves a function, bringing the benefits of alien biology to all people.
Starting with its work on joiners.
Your Protean files have already been deleted, and the Killick experiments stopped.
That's not enough. No more treating people as test subjects. You'll reform Protean, and I'll be watching.
I have no desire to make you into an enemy.
He offered to try and cure us. We refused, of course. We don't entirely understand him, but we don't blame him for Protean's work, or for our joining, whatever his part really was.
You forgive him that easily? He means something to you.
We don't think he likes people. We don't know why he tolerates us, but he does, and we're grateful. We don't always have to trust our friends.
Doctor, what can I do for you today?
I was just thinking what a fine team we've made. You realize that when we met, I had an extremely low opinion of you. I assumed you'd earned your position through political connections. I made that mistake with an agent once before.
What agent would that be?
A man who was promoted to Keeper, and eventually Minister. Clever if confounding. He'll have my eternal respect. Your path may be similar to his. Given that and the state of our empire, I believe it's wise if I continue to advise you.
I believe it's wise to keep you at my side.
Then you're learning.
In any case, I'm at your disposal. And one of these days you should consider training more operatives. I'll be happy to grant my insight.